Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I am Scott. It is time for the ranking of the 22 books that I read in December. Now, before I get into the ranking, I want to clarify this is a ranking. This is not me giving my review of the books. I will talk about the books a little bit, but this is not me reviewing it for you. So if you feel, based on what I'm saying here, that you didn't read those books, if somebody has said, I will please refer you to my previous weekly wrap ups. I talk more in depth about the books. So I read the books. That's my whiny comment of the video. So let's move on to the 22 books that I read in December. Coming in at number 22, the worst book of the month. Not only the worst book of the month, in the running for worst book of the year. I haven't finalized the bottom 20 yet, but it spoiler, it's definitely in the top 3 worst books. It is The Plight Before Christmas by Kate Stewart. A woman, Whitney, goes to a cabin with her family for Christmas. They're celebrating Christmas. Her brother comes there, brings a coworker. Oh, the coworker is her ex-boyfriend Eli, who she hasn't seen like in 18 years, 17 or 18 years. They dated in college for 8 months, and then he broke up with her, and now he's there. He has come there for a purpose. He knows that his coworker is her brother. He has basically kind of finagled his way there, and he's basically a creep. He's eavesdropping on lots of people conversations. He's manipulative. He basically says everything. Anytime she has something to say, he always counters with, he could bang her right then if he wanted to. It's just, you know, I've had a lot of romance books that before this year, I wasn't generally a romance reader. I've had a lot that I've read this year. I've had a lot that I really liked, but I've also had a lot that I really disliked. And they're generally written by women, and I just don't understand some of these male characters in books written by women who are basically abusive. I mean, he's not physically abusive with her that I really remember in the book, but he's emotionally abusive with her. It's kind of verbally. I mean, that's more of a reach. He's verbally not nice. I don't know. Well, oh, he is physically abusive because he threw something at her once in the grocery store. Now, I believe it was toilet paper, but she had also been injured previously, and she got hit from behind. Now, the toilet paper wasn't going to hurt, but what could have happened after he hit her, don't know. But I don't think it was that big a deal, but I don't want to say he wasn't physically abusive when there was a case he was. Truly, worst book of the month. Okay, the next 2 books I could pretty much just go together. They are Slashing Through the Snow and 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, books number 21 and 20 by Jacqueline Frost. They are part of the Christmas Tree Farm Mystery Series. Those are books 3 and 2, respectively. I thought I liked the first book in the series, which I will talk about later. But basically, this woman goes back to her home. She has been in Portland, Maine, and she moves back to Mistletoe, Maine, and goes to her parents' Christmas tree farm. And in books 2 and 3, she gets in a relationship with the sheriff. she each year around Christmas somebody is killed, uh, and somehow it seems related to her in a way, except for the fourth book, but it is done on no, it is done to somebody who was staying at her inn in the fourth book. In the second and third book, it is first her best friend, and then it is basically her secondary mother figure. The sheriff, well, he's interested in her, but he's been cold with her in the second book, and they are dating in the third book. But he keeps telling her not to get involved, not to get involved. And she keeps getting threatened by the murderer, whoever the murderer is in each book. Why the murderer keeps doing this, these different murderers, when every time a murderer has started her in the previous book, that murderers end up being caught. If I were a murderer, I'd say, damn, I kill somebody in Mistletoe and she gets involved. I go after her, I get caught. Maybe I'll just say the fuck away from her. But yeah, I thought the first book was good, but as I read each subsequent book, it got worse. Overall, bad series. I made the mistake of I got the first two books free as audiobooks. And then I decided I'll get books 3 and 4 because they're pretty cheap. I would either have to use a credit or buy them, but they're pretty cheap. So I went and bought them, and then I'm like, oh, book 2, not good, not good. So I decided I had to finish. I shouldn't have done that. Book number 19 is Along Came Holly by Cody Hall. Uh, it is the third book in a series about Winters. That's her last name. Winters' siblings, Nick, Mary, and Holly. This is the third book. This is Holly. Holly is a YouTube star and runs her own Christmas shop. Her business is basically back to back with a hardware store run by Declan. Declan is a huge, giant, tall man, which you will know because it gets mentioned many times. Holly is also very short. Declan hates Christmas. Grr, grr, grr. And Declan is a child. I mean, he's almost 30, but he's a child. He's a temper tantrum, throwing, whiny, using his physical presence to intimidate people, grabbing people by the wrist way too many times, using his actual physicality to intimidate. I like the series well enough, but as you'll see, I go from, oh, the first book is here, second book's here, third book is here. Declan is just one of the worst male characters that I have read this year. Not a good book. Uh, I'd say read Nick and Noel's Christmas playlist, which I will talk about later. You could take or leave. There's something about Mary. It was fine. But this one you should avoid. Book number 18 is Stalking Around the Christmas Tree by Jacqueline Frost. It is the fourth book in the Christmas Tree Farm series. It's slightly better than books 2 and 3. One, because the main character is not directly involved with somebody being accused of murder. However, she does have, spoiler alert, she is engaged to the sheriff now in this one. So his sister is possibly being stalked by somebody. And I talked about this book in a weekly wrap up, problems I had with this book. A lot of the stuff that happened with the sister basically happened between the two books, the third and this one, that have to do with what's happening to her. That it was a big part of book 3, what was happening with the sister, and then the book ended before anything happened with the sister. And then in book 4, it's a year later because you got your annual Christmas murder every year, and stuff has happened with the sister, but we didn't see it. So it's slightly better. I'm I don't know if there's going to be another book in the series. I'm not going to read it. My suggestion is you don't. If for any reason you feel you need to read this, I would read book one and then stop. But I suggest not even reading that. I rated book one pretty highly when I read it, but reading the subsequent three other books has made me change my opinion about it. Book number 17 is The Stupidest Angel by Christopher Moore. It is a Christmas story. It says a heartwarming tale of Christmas terror. It is set in Pine Cove, a location which has been in some of Christopher Moore's other books. I generally like Christopher Moore. Love Bites, You Suck, Dirty Job, Fool. I don't tend to enjoy the few books that I've read that are set in Pine Cove. This is one of them. I will say a lot of the reason I rank this so low is because the character of Tucker. Tucker appeared in other books, and I don't really remember those other books that I did read, but I do remember I don't like him. And the characters in here, some of who appear in other more books, just there's not a lot of substance to them. And that's not the case that I get in a lot of Christopher Moore books, which all are generally very funny, but most of the time the characters have more depth. They just don't in this one. There are better Christmas books. Book number 16 is Outlaw Pete by Bruce Springsteen and illustrated by Frank Caruso. If you watch my weekly wrap up, you will know that this is the 200th book I read this year. And the reason I read it is because it is the 200th book I read this year. On the last day of the year, I needed to get to 200 because, and so I read a very short book. It is based on the song Outlaw Pete, which I believe is on the Dreams album. I'm not 100% sure. Or working on a dream. I believe it's working on a dream. The song is okay. The song made into a book. It's for collectors who are Springsteen fans, which I am one, but this is the second time I read it. I read it the first time I got it. I think I got it about the time it came out, which was it 2012? 2014. So I read it 9 years ago. I haven't read it since, but I did read it to make it my 200th book, which I have done. But hey, it's still better than like 6 other books on this list. Book number 15 is There's Something About Mary by Cody Hall. It's the second book. The main character is Mary Winters. She has moved back to a Christmas tree farm and wants to take over the business, but her dad has a foreman, Clark, who is somebody she used to go to high school with. She had a bit of crush on him, but didn't let him know. He had a bit of crush on her, but didn't let her know. He's a single father now. They slowly get together. It's 400 pages long, and I don't know why it's 400 pages long. There's nothing wrong with the story. It's just not a lot really happens, and yet it's 400 pages long. So it was okay. His son's mother makes an appearance in the book because, of course, she would. Doesn't really come to much, and her reason for being there doesn't really make sense. It's basically like, oh, I need to bring her in, but I don't want her to compete in any way for his affection. So she's going to come in for this reason, this very lamely explained reason, and then be like, no, never mind. And book number 14 was The Hunter by Richard Stark. Richard Stark is the pseudonym for Donald E. Westlake. He's written many crime novels. Richard Stark mainly writes about the thief Parker. I mentioned before in a weekly wrap up that Richard Stark is basically what Stephen King looked to for his Richard Bachman pseudonym. He also names a character or a pseudonym in a book, The Dark Half, George Stark, in homage to Stark. Uh, it's a book about a thief with no real conscience. He kills people. He steals. If you just want crime without any real no morality getting in the way of your crime, then this is a book for you. It was fine for what it was, but I don't think I'm going to read any further Richard Stark books. It's just, as I mentioned in one of the weekly wrap ups, it's like slasher horror movies. It's like they're fine, but if I want to watch a horror movie, I want to see something about characters that I care about, because then it's just like, oh, how is this person going to be killed? And that doesn't hold my interest for very long. Book number 13, we finally get to the last book, or the first book, in the Christmas Tree Farm Mystery series. It is The 12 Slaves of Christmas by Jacqueline Frost. It's book number 1. It says the 12 slaves because that's the pun, but there's only one murder. It's a strange thing to get annoyed about, the title being incorrect, but it's only interesting in that I hadn't seen any of the other books before, but you could honestly read any of these books and you would pretty much get the same beats in each one, except with her relationship with the sheriff changing. In the first book, he's interested in her, but they're not dating or anything. In the second book, he's playing hard to get for a reason. There is a reason, but I think it's kind of dumb. In the third book, they're dating. In the fourth book, they're engaged. So other than that, pretty much plug in things there, and it's the same book, except of course for the last book, in which the murder is a little bit different. But in this book, somebody gets murdered on her parents' Christmas tree farm, and for some reason, her father is suspected. Well, not some reason. He was arguing with the murder victim, but lots of people were arguing with the murder victim. So I will also point out the sheriff, not good at his job. I didn't mention before, back there in my previous books, before the start of this book, in the town of Mistletoe, there had not been a murder for 40 years. And now there's a murder every Christmas. 4 Christmases in a row. The man's an awful sheriff. He's the one killing people. That's not a spoiler. That's just my thinking of what is happening. He's killing people, and he's making it so that other people take the fall. Book number 12 is Nick and Noelle's Christmas Playlist. It is the first book by Cody Hall in the Winter Siblings series. Nick and Noelle are lifelong friends. Nick has just come back from being in the military. Noelle, her parents died when she was a teenager, and the winters kind of took her in, but she's afraid that she will lose people, so that's why she doesn't want to get in relationships. But again, she's lifelong friends with Nick. I don't really understand how him being her friend or him being her romantic partner, either way, if she loses him, she still loses him. Her her thinking just is not explained very well. But that's her emotional baggage that gets us through the book. Again, this was the best of the 3 books. They went in order. Both Nick and Noelle as characters are fine. Their relationship is good. I think her thinking is a bit silly, but you got to put obstacles in there somehow. Book number 11 is The Head of Kays by P.G. Wodehouse. The Head of Kays is one of the books of Wodehouse's that I have not read previously, so I'm reading the ones I haven't read before so that I can do my 5-year battle for P.G. Wodehouse. This is another school story. I like it better than some of the previous school stories because, one, there aren't as many characters. In previous school stories, there's not really main characters, just all these characters constantly thrown at you. And here, there's a main character, and I read it near the beginning of the month. I can't remember his name, but one of the students, he's made the head of K's, which K is one of the masters. Each house is named after a master. Often has discipline problems, mainly because of K, but he keeps blaming it on his heads, and so he replaces him. And it's basically this kid trying to run this place while this other person who should have been the head is upset, even though they're friends, and there's other students in K's who are trying to sabotage stuff for him. It's okay. There's a little bit more comedy from Woodhouse that we don't get in previous school stories, and that we will see get a lot better as the years go on. But this was written, I think, in 1906. He first started publishing books in 1902, so he I think he really hits a stride around 1909, 1910, whenever he publishes Mike and Smith. So, as a school story, it's pretty good. As a Woodhouse book, eh. Book number 10 is The Little Nugget by P.G. Woodhouse. I will have to say that when I read it, I think I ranked it a little bit higher than where it would is now, because I do a PG Woodhouse podcast with my daughter. We did the podcast on this novel the day after Christmas, 2 days after Christmas, and that podcast made my opinion of the book go down. That's the thing, is when you do podcasts about something, you might end up liking that thing less. That's not always the case, because I have PG Woodhouse books that I would rank as a 5 star, and I talked about them in the podcast, and it hasn't changed my opinion. But this one is flawed. It has to do with kidnapping, as too many Woodhouse books do. A man's fiance wants him to kidnap this kid for her friend, and because her friend slash employer, she's divorced from her husband. The husband has custody of the kid. The woman, Mrs. Ford, she spoils the kid, and there are also gangsters from the States with horrible American dialect, who want to kidnap the kid. Uh, Kidnapping children and ransoming them are a big thing in some Woodhouse novels, and I think this is the first one chronologically that it really appears in. It's okay. The romance is literally just shoved in there. It was originally published without the romance in it. The romance isn't much. The main character is a little bit more introspective than most Woodhouse characters. Not that that matters much to Robin, but I did kind of enjoy the change a little bit. But overall, not a great Woodhouse novel. But again, it's one of his earlier works. So book number 9 is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. I've never read this book before. I have seen 2 of the movies. I liked one of the movies. I liked Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I enjoyed that movie more than this book. The book was good, but I think the movie was better. I mean, if I had read the book first, maybe I would think differently. But yeah, I think I like the movie better. Well, the book is fine. It has a few differences between the book and the movie. Willy Wonka is still a little creepy. Still is a slave laborer, I believe. But I don't think he kills kids in here. The kids appear to be alive at the end of this book, and I wasn't quite sure in the movie. Book number 8 is another Roald Dahl book. It is a Fantastic Mr. Fox. Have not seen the movie. had not read this before. I just thought it was a charming, short book about a fox outwitting three farmers. And that's basically what it is. It's like I said, it's very short and it's funny. It's as with most Roald Dahl books that are for children, some of it maybe not for children. There's some casual killing of chickens in here, but it was enjoyable. Book number 7 is Set the Record Straight. I will have to look at this. Hannah Bonham Young. It is a novella. It's a sapphic romance. There's almost no conflict in this book. If you're looking for conflict, this is not the book for you. I don't think that it would necessarily be the book for me, but I also happened to read this right after The Plight Before Christmas. And this was a book about two women who loved and respected each other, who treated each other kindly. One of them had very loving parents. One of them didn't have loving parents, but those parents don't appear at all in the book. Uh, there's some mistaken uh, perceptions about the character that gets resolved very easily. There's a fiance who broke up with one of the women, who that also gets just kind of set aside pretty easily. If I had read this at any other time, I probably wouldn't have liked it this much, but because I read it after The Plight Before Christmas, I just find it was a cleanser. It isn't always the type of book that I would like. I would say 95% of the time, this is not the type of book that I would go for, but it fit perfectly for me here, so that's why it's number 7. Number 6 is A Wish for Wings That Work by Berke Breathed. It is another very short book. It has Opus in it, Opus from Bloom County. It is not a comic strip book, it's an illustrated story. It's a Christmas related story. I got this for Christmas Eve. We give each other Christmas related books or holiday related books on Christmas Eve, and this is one I got. I read it Christmas morning. It's a very nice, sweet book about a penguin who wishes for wings that work. Because he's a penguin, he can't fly, and he sees other birds that can fly. He gets jealous. He asks Santa for wings that work, and he learns the value of his own nature in the end. Book number 5 is Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellafleur. It is another sapphic romance, Christmas related, fake dating. That's where it is the similarities between it and Set the Record Straight divide. There's plenty of conflict in here. There are awful parents, both sides. There's interfering brothers. There's there's a broken engagement, but a lot more animosity there. Uh, the two women in here, they go out on a blind date. Doesn't go well, but the one Darcy, I can always remember Darcy's name, but can't always remember the other one's name. But Darcy, she's an actuary, and she tells her brother who set up the blind date that it went great, and they're going out again, just to because he wants to go on a I forget, a speed dating thing with her, and so she tells her that she's seeing this woman now, but he works with that woman, and she says not to say anything, and so of course he sees him next day and says something, and so they end up doing the fake dating thing and develop feelings for each other, and I like the relationship between the two of them quite a bit. I think mainly the reason I didn't rank it higher is I get tired of the whole awful parent thing. Awful parents, sure, but awful parents in which the child or children basically are like, okay, I'll accept you as you are. You don't really apologize and you haven't really changed, but okay. No, I didn't like the brother. The brother kept, he was pushy and interfering, and he basically felt like he knew what his sister needed, but didn't really listen to her. So, other than that, I thought it was really great, though. I don't know if this author has any other books out there, but if I run into them, I may read them. Book number 4 is Songs by Bruce Springsteen. This was book 198. Yes. Mainly read it because it's song lyrics. So it's pretty easy to read. I know all the songs in here. It is a book that I read before, but I could finish this in a few hours so that I could reach 200 books, a goal that there was no reason for me to get to, but I felt I did. So, of course, I love all the Springsteen songs. Well, I don't love all the Springsteen songs. I mean, Mary Queen of Arkansas and the Angel off of Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey aren't great. In third, I don't like some of the songs on Born in the USA that much. For example, No Surrender, the live version from live 1975 to 85 is great. The version on the album, eh, but this covers everything up until The Rising. If you're a Bruce Springsteen fan, you'll like it. If you're a super Bruce Springsteen fan, you probably already have this. So yeah, this won't do much for a lot of you, but it does for me. Okay, book number 3 is Saint Mick by Mick Foley. Mick Foley is a retired professional wrestler, uh, well known for hardcore matches, uh, chairs, tables, thumbtacks. Also happens to be pretty much well known as a very sweet guy outside of the ring. Uh, this is mainly talking about his time after he's retired, although he's possibly trying to wrestle again, but he finds out that he can't. He does volunteer work for Rain. He's dealing with issues from all the multiple injuries he's had. And he also loves Christmas, what leads him to becoming a Santa Claus. Now, at first, he does the Santa Claus thing, one, so he can appear on WWE Raw and make some money and be seen, and also appear in a documentary, uh, I Am Santa Claus, I believe. But he also starts to learn to love it just for what being Santa Claus gives to other people. And his book goes into that quite a bit with some side trips into the other topics I talked about. And also his son, uh, who is autistic, and he talks a little bit. He has 4 children. Two of them are named Huey and Dewey. Um, One's named Mickey, and his daughter Noelle. Christmas. Uh, but I mentioned before, he has written other books. He's written autobiography, Have a Nice Day, which I think is probably the best wrestling autobiography that there is. Number 2 is The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. It's written about the year after her husband passed away. He passed away on December 30th, 2003 or 4. I can't remember which. Um, and her daughter is also in the hospital for a lot of different reasons. You know, it turns out her daughter recovers, but then dies a year related from another issue. But this is about that year from when her husband dies and basically the grief process. And I have to say, it hit home for me. If you're somebody who has suffered through losses, this may hit too close to home for you. Perhaps not. Now, some of it, I have to say, I didn't relate to just because of the differences in the type of people we are. But definitely, like the immediate uh, few weeks after, definitely, I was there. So uh, there aren't a lot of books on grief that I connect with. I read like C.S. Lewis's, I believe it was on grief. I don't really felt like I necessarily connected too much with that, but also he kind of goes at it, I believe, from a Christian point of view. I'm personally agnostic, although religion for you, yay, whatever. So I don't think I quite connected quite as much with his, but I do more with her. And book number one is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. If you've seen my previous weekly wrap ups, you'll notice this is a different version of A Christmas Carol. I just had to buy this one because one of my cat yarked all over that copy. Christmas Carol is something, of course, that I read every year. I'm just working on the top 20 books, and I'm not going to put A Christmas Carol on it because I read it every year. If I've read something more than twice, I'm not going to put it on a top 20 list. But it is the top book of December. Will it be the top book of December next year? Maybe. See if I can find something that beats it. But it will not be The Plight Before Christmas. I will tell you that. So, many Christmas related books this month. I read 22 books this month, and 14 of them were Christmas related. I had some other books that I started reading that were Christmas related, but I did not finish, and I probably will not finish, at least not the Christmas related ones. So I will hit you soon with my year wrap ups and top 20, bottom 20, and we will see new videos in the new year. 5 year battle, PG Woodhouse, ranking some Stephen King short stories, ranking all the Stephen King short stories, at least until his new book comes out. So please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I will talk to you next time.